A lot of you have been asking lately how I have exposed a step wedge onto my film to do these film tests. So rather than answer the question over and over in the comments, I thought I would go ahead and just make this video and show you exactly what it is I'm doing. Welcome to the Naked Photographer, where I'll be exposing myself. No, I won't. That sounded better in my head. There are a few different ways that you can expose a step wedge onto your film. I'm going to show you how to do it with an enlarger like this, but there are special devices called sensitometers that do the job for you. I am using one of those because I want to be consistent from video to video, and I may not be able to set my enlarger up the same way every time to the exact same settings. To make it easier, I got one of these devices off of eBay. Now there are three basic types of these devices. One, like mine, uses a halogen bulb and an electronic timer. There are much more professional machines out there that would be used at places like Ilford and Kodak, made by EG&G, and they use a xenon flash bulb. And those are pretty expensive when you can find them, and they're a little on the older side, so they may need some work if you know how to work with circuits. Then there are LED type that are easily available on eBay, but they use either really strong blue or very strong green LEDs because they're meant for the radiography X-ray type film. That type is really good for testing the difference between two different speed films, but not necessarily good for figuring out your ISO speeds. And that's because it's not a full spectrum, so you're not going to be using the full ability of the film, which are typically daylight balanced, even black and white. The one that I'm using is meant for X-ray film, but because it's a halogen bulb with a full spectrum, a little bit of tweaking of the spectrum with an 88 filter gives me the ability to do that. So let me show you the machine that I'm using, and then I'll show you how to set it up with an enlarger. So here's the machine that I use. It's the Wedge IW by Tobias Associates. They make a couple of different models. The other one uses a mechanical shutter. This one's electronically controlled. I'll open it up in a moment and show you. Essentially, all you do is slip the film emulsion side up, with the lights off of course, in here, and then you expose it. And that's it. You take it out, you process it, and you're done. In my case, I take it out, I load it into the camera, and shoot all the test shots. Let me open this up and show you what's inside. I'll unplug it for safety. Okay. So here's the interior of the machine. Of course, this one's electronically controlled, so it's got its circuit board and all the bits and pieces in there. The chamber is right here. The film slips under this portion. Let me get a little bit closer in there. All right. This piece of metal has some black velvet to eliminate reflections. This, as you can see, is mirrored on the inside. I've got the light bulb here, a white diffuser here, and let me show you how this exposes. And that's it. So the light goes to a sensor here, and that just basically tells it when to turn off. So when the light comes through, it bounces off this 45-degree mirror, and underneath that is a neutral density filter, a couple of layers of blue CTB or ADA filter, and then the step wedge. So light comes out, bounces down through the step wedge and filters, exposes the film, and that's it. And essentially that's all that a sensitometer needs. So I'm going to reassemble this, and then we'll look at some other options. You can make a simple sensitometer from just a box with a light and a simple shutter, like the other WedgeX machine. EG&G uses a flash, so you could make one from, say, a diffusion chamber from a color head, and a small camera flash that's manual, so you can change the settings, power settings, and then maybe a few layers of neutral density to control the exposure. That would work fine too. This is essentially just an electronically timed light bulb with the step wedge in between and a couple filters to reduce the intensity. So anything like that, as long as you're getting even exposure, you can do that. But if you don't want to build anything special, let me kind of go over what you might need to do with a enlarger. Because if you have a dark room, chances are you've got an enlarger, which is an electronically timed light source. You may not have quite what you need to get ISO standard, but most people aren't trying to figure that out. This is very useful for what I'm using my sensitometer for, and that's just to see the relative speed difference between two films. So this would certainly work for that. You could also plot a H&D curve to get like your contrast index or your gamma, more or less. But film speed takes a little bit more accuracy than this may give you. That's okay. To do this, it's basically the same as what we were doing on the contrast tests for the color head versus filters. We're going to take our step tablet. Now this is a smaller number 2 tablet, not the large 3 that I was using before. And I'm going to tape it to the underside of the glass. Let me get some tape here. Black masking tape would work better, but I don't have any black on me right now for this demonstration. Okay. And I'm just going to tape it right to the glass. Now, in order to make sure we get the film in the right spot, we're going to take another piece of tape, and we're just going to position it just to push the film up against it as a guide. Nothing crazy. I'm just going to make it a little too long here as I struggle with the tape. And I'm just going to kind of put it in here somewhere. It's 35 millimeters, so I'm going to give myself some breathing room with the sprocket holes and tape it down. That's it. Now, with the lights out, I can stretch my film across, push it against the tape, and make my exposure. But camera film is very fast, much faster than paper, so we need to be able to control that exposure a little bit better. The enlarger, fortunately, has a few different controls we can use for that. One, we have an aperture, so we can close the aperture all the way down. Probably have to do that. It's a contact print method, so we don't have to worry about diffraction or anything like that, but that'll stop a lot of light down. Then we may need to raise the head up as far as possible too, because the further up it is, the less light reaches the table. And then finally, we may find, in order to keep our exposure in the half-second range, which is well within reciprocity, but long enough that these timers can control fairly accurately, we may find that we need to reduce the light even more. So perhaps some neutral density filters up here with your negative carrier, even just plain white paper from your inkjet printer will work too. It's white, it'll just reduce the intensity. And then finally, because panchromatic black and white film is essentially daylight balanced, if you notice on the box it will give you different ISO settings based on whether you're shooting in daylight or tungsten. I would recommend you base it off daylight. So take an 80A filter and put it on your lens. So you can use one like just a screw-in filter and screw it onto your lens. And that will change the tungsten bulb to more of a daylight balance. You can kind of mess with your color filters if you would like to imitate the same thing, but an 80A is just easy to use. And then that will allow you to expose your film, and you can get a test strip on there. Now you're going to have black exposed areas where the step tablet is not sitting. That's okay. Mine creates clear because it's only exposing that small step. But this will work perfectly fine. It will still give you decent results. So expose it, clip it off, develop it, check your exposure. Remember, every step is a half a stop. So if you don't see any clear, or maybe you see too much clear, adjust your exposure. I would recommend sticking with a half-second time and simply reduce the amount of light with something up here if you've already maxed out your aperture. And that should do it. That will give you an exposure on your film so that you can start plotting your H&D curves or just check relative speed if that's a goal for what you want to do. Now, if you really do want to get deep into sensitometry, this will give you a good start. We're going to go into a little bit more detail with sensitometry another day. I'm not going to go into that topic yet, simply because there's a lot of prep for that. So this will get you started. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm always happy to try to answer as best as I can. If you do want a little bit more insight into the process, then I would recommend going to Google and looking for the Kodak Basic Sensitometry Handbook. It gives a lot of great information. It shows you the basics of what a sensitometer should have as far as the components and how to start calculating your log exposure time so that you can then plot H&D curves. We'll go into more detail in that once I do finally get the nerve to make a sensitometry video. Until then, that should hold you over and give you plenty of basic information. Until then, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.